Hi everyone, so as most of you already know, I was supposed to have a debate with the so-called nutrition science watchdog known as Bart Kay. I decided not to debate him for various reasons, and those reasons are about to become very apparent to you. But Bart Kay did end up debating a vegan doctor named Dr. Ricky on Ask Yourself's Discord. And Bart Kay just made a complete ass of himself. He didn't provide evidence for his claims, he was spouting absolute nonsense, and by the end of the debate, he was yelling and swearing and couldn't control his temper.
So wait a minute, let me ask you a question. So you're saying that the mechanistic explanations in data is more important than a meta-analysis. Is that what you're saying?
Oh my god, yes.
Okay, well, what you're saying is not scientific, unfortunately.
Who's the senior scientist of the two of us?
Just because someone's senior doesn't
Who's
mean they're
the
not
senior
wrong.
scientist of the two of us?
Just because they're your senior doesn't mean you're not wrong.
Scientific, Charlie Brown. You back it up with some credentials, okay? Have you got a list of publications as long as your fucking...
Have you ever actually...
Have you got a list of publications as long as your arm?
Have you ever actually treated...
No, you don't. Have you acted as peer reviewer for 3 separate journals? No, you fucking haven't.
Have you actually...
Have you taught more pre-med students than you've had hot dinners? No, you fucking haven't. I have. You will give me some goddamn respect. Don't tell me what is scientific and what is not, Charlie Brown.
Post your publications?
Bart, sorry, man, sorry. Bart, look, I can say the same thing to you, man. I can say, have you ever treated patients? Have you ever prescribed medications? Have you ever actually practiced medicine? You've taught pre-med students, but have you ever been a medical doctor yourself? You haven't. So we
are here to discuss science, Charlie Brown. Science. And you're telling me about science, and you can fuck off, because I'm the one who's here to tell you about science.
And I also want to point out Bart's total hypocrisy here. Like I said before, Bart and I were supposed to have a debate, and Bart sent an email to my business email stating that if we are to have this debate, I have to be on my best behavior. I can't yell, I can't swear, I can't talk over him. I have to be polite and professional the entire time. And then what does Bart do when he's debating this medical doctor? Well, he starts screaming, yelling, swearing, and he can't control his temper. And I knew he'd do this. I knew Bart was going to just scream, yell, act like a baby, and that's why I didn't want to debate him. And I also suggest you subscribe to Bart Kay's debate opponent, Dr. Ricky. He just started his own YouTube channel called Tactical Medicine, and if you click the link in the description down below, it'll send you over to his YouTube channel. Also in the description is links to Ask Yourself's Discord, so if any of you want to get involved in any more debates like this, then click the link. It'll send you over to Ask Yourself's Discord. But with all of that out of the way, I hope you guys enjoy this long train wreck of a debate.
Okay, Ricky, have we got you there? Yeah. Okay, sweet. Bart, why don't you just convey what you opened with when we started way earlier? Just your sort of general case. The topic is LDL's relation to CBD. Is that a fair way to characterize the topic?
Sure. I mean, my original starting point right from the very beginning was that there is a school of thought who, for whatever reason, either are absolutely convinced and or want to, for other reasons, support the idea that LDL cholesterol is causal in atherogenesis, atherosclerosis, heart disease. My position is that is a position which is A, not proven, B, unable to be proved, and C, fucking ridiculous, actually, and without any real support of any kind other than associative data, and that in fact there are many reasons and many questions that can be posed which cast very serious doubt, at least on that hypothesis, and several which actually, if you want to be really anal about it, completely dismiss that hypothesis, like the one I was trying to get through to that Australian fuckwit a few minutes ago. So that's my position, basically.
So is your position based on research that you can present?
I do work from a standpoint of having been a senior lecturer for 15 years, having been involved in the production of peer-reviewed literature, both as a researcher and also as a
What did
peer
you
reviewer.
say? I'm sorry. You said what did you say? I missed the first part of what you said.
I said, yes, I work from a standpoint of having been a senior lecturer for the last 15
Lecturer of
years.
what?
Many things, mostly in the
Like
latter.
what?
Well, if you let me
Are you
finish. Hang on. Stop
Let him
interrupting me.
answer,
Stop
bro. Let him
interrupting me.
answer.
Don't interrupt me. If you want to ask me questions, let me answer them. Okay? My history is in the teaching of cardiovascular pathophysiology. Prior to that, musculoskeletal anatomy and physiology. Prior to that, exercise performance. Okay, they are my professional teaching background. I have a list of peer-reviewed publications in physiology and in pathophysiology and in nutrition and in statistics and research methods, actually, if you must know, not to mention a couple of book chapters here and there, and also a quite significant history of external consultancies with major multi-million-dollar external organizations to the university. So yes, I do have quite a good grasp of science, actually. And if I need to cite references to things that I'm talking about in my arguments, I can do that. If you send me an email, I can make that available and people can pass those things around if you like. My understanding was that I was here today to have a discussion rather than a debate. If you want to have a debate that has rules, actually, and those rules involve, non-interruption, non-molestation while people are trying to talk, and it involves this time span, and it involves providing all evidence in terms of your references in advance. Given that that's not what's happening here, we're having a discussion. Okay, you can treat me with some goddamn respect as a scientist. Thank you very much. And if you want some references, you ask me for them, and I will send you an email with any references you want that back up any of the assertions that I may or may not make here. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's fine with me. So that's great that you have a background in it. I appreciate that. My approach with these discussions is really to start with high level evidence and case control studies, cohort studies, meta analyses, like that kind of thing. I love pathophysiology and mechanisms of disease, and I love to discuss that. But the problem is, as you know, in medicine, the mechanisms of disease and physiology doesn't always bear out when we look at high level evidence and large population studies, right? So I think the starting point of this kind of discussion should be at the top of the evidence hierarchy with high level research, meta analysis, case control studies, prospective cohort studies. That's how I would start. I mean, we can get. I don't know if you're interested in mechanism. We can get into mechanism. That's fine. But
I am only interested in mechanism. I am not interested in anything else but mechanism, because mechanism is what we need to support the claim, and it's not there.
Well, actually, that's not the case. So in medicine, the way it works is that you need high level research, and actually mechanistic data is low level evidence. That as you know, there's many things that we can demonstrate through clinical trials, clinical research. For example, medications that are effective in certain diseases, and we have no mechanistic data at all. So just because we have an absence of mechanistic data, which in this case we don't, but just because we do have an absence of mechanistic data does not mean that there's not clinical implications. So from a medical standpoint, the starting point of a discussion about a medical topic should start with the strongest evidence we have. And the strongest evidence we have is not mechanistic evidence. That's not the strongest evidence. The strongest evidence is meta-analysis, case control, prospective cohort studies. So that's where I would start the discussion.
Okay, how many peer-reviewed publications have you ever been involved in yourself?
I have one publication.
Okay, how many different journals have you sat on the board as a peer reviewer for?
0.
Okay, so you're talking to a scientist who's a senior to you. Okay, so that's the first point.
I mean, that's not relevant to the discussion. Where I'm
what you're doing
you're
is you're claiming authority. Hang on. It is important because you're claiming with authority that where we need to start, and you're claiming that we need to start at what you're calling high-level evidence, and I'm going to call bullshit on your high-level evidence, and I'm going to call bullshit on your hierarchy of evidence because there's actually nothing to support that other than dogmatic belief.
So it's dogmatic.
Mechanistic evidence is the evidence you need to prove a case. Okay, this debate is about whether LDL cholesterol causes atherosclerosis or whether it doesn't. The answer is it does not. Patently, clearly, and obviously, there is no mechanistic data whatsoever to suggest otherwise. And in fact, there's plenty of mechanistic data that shows us what does cause it, and it's not LDL. So the medical model that says we start with this hierarchy and we ignore the mechanism because we've got this thing that seems to work, it's absolute nonsense.
Okay. Well, I think rather than, put down our respective expertise onto the table when we're having a discussion, it's more helpful to put down our evidence. So when we have a scientific discussion, when there's a discussion between scientists, and I consider myself a scientist as well. I've been involved in science for my whole life. It's not helpful to say I'm a senior scientist, I'm a superior scientist. That's not helpful in a scientific discussion. What is helpful is I present my evidence for a claim that I'm making or a hypothesis I'm trying to support. You put down your evidence for the hypothesis that you have, and then we analyze the evidence to see what actually bears out. Going back again to the evidence hierarchy for a second, the reason why the evidence hierarchy is so important and why it is relevant in clinical research is because, as you know, what makes evidence valuable, or one of the key things that makes it valuable, is statistical power. So when you have meta-analysis, when you have large studies, you have a lot more patients involved, you have a lot more data involved, and as a study is more powered, it has more ability to produce results that are not due to chance, as you know. So this it's one of the cornerstones of research. Is the power of a study, the ability of a study to discern a real connection, a real disease, a real treatment that's effective, as opposed to simple mechanistic speculation, which is much less valuable because, again, as you know, I don't know how much clinical experience you have or how much with treating patients, but if you do have some clinical experience, you'll know that as you take medications, as you take treatments, as you apply medicine to patients, things that we think work a certain way actually don't. For example, relevant to this discussion, statin medications, lower LDL, but we know that there's other mechanisms that are involved, right? So we think that it works in a certain way, but it may not. It may not be borne out when you look at the actual high-level evidence, right? We think a drug, for example, has a certain effect A, but then when you research it, and for example, they may do animal studies that confirm that what we suspect mechanistically. But then when you do a high-level case control study, it's not found. When you do a meta-analysis, that association is gone. So that's the problem with starting a discussion with mechanism, is that it may not be borne out when you look at large-scale populations, which is, and that's the reason why it's most important, is because the power allows us to differentiate things that are true from things that are statistically not significant.
Okay, what did they teach you on day one of your undergraduate studies with respect to causation versus association?
You can just keep going.
What did they teach you with respect to those two things?
There's a lot of things. There's nothing specific. There's many different things that we're talking about.
There's only one thing they teach you with respect to that on day one in any respectable medical school anywhere in the world. What is it?
Hey guys, let's keep this. Oh, sorry, was that Bart? I thought that was someone piping in. Let's keep it just Bart and Ricky.
That was me.
Sorry, I thought that was someone else. My bad.
So the question stands, what did they teach you, Doctor, on your first day of undergraduate studies with respect to causation versus association?
I don't recall.
God's sake. that these two things are not connected. You cannot infer causality from association. It
Yeah,
doesn't
sure.
matter
Yeah, that's fine.
doesn't-
I'm not
excuse
against
me,
that.
I let you finish. It doesn't matter how strong a correlation you've got, or how big your sample is, or what your statistical power is. It makes no difference whatsoever to the fact that a correlative study cannot now, neither will it in the past, in the future, or any other time ever, provide us with causal proof. To provide causal proof, you need a hypothesis around a mechanistic etiology of the disease process. You need some experimental evidence to support your hypothesis, and you need to show an intervention that works by having an impact on the thing that you've been looking at. That is not the case in the LDL hypothesis.
So you're basically saying that all epidemiological research is irrelevant and of no value. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that body of work is unable to inform us on the cause of atherosclerosis in human beings.
Yeah, I have to disagree with you. Do you want to actually go into research? Because I have some research we can review together, and then we can discuss.
Well, you have a bunch of epidemiology?
Yeah, I have a study that looked at genetic, epidemiologic, and clinical studies.
Okay, great. Let's go. I'm all good on the Mendelian stuff as well. If you want to go there, let's have fun. Go for it. Let's talk about it.
Okay. I'll post it here in the Discord if you want to.
Oh, okay. I mean, post it or don't post it. I don't give a shit. Just tell me what's in it, and we'll talk about what the problems with it are.
Sure. So this study looked at Mendelian randomization studies, randomized trials with 2 million participants, over 20 million person years. I'm just recapping it because I don't know if it's open here for you. 150,000 cardiovascular events. Anyway, the conclusion here: consistent evidence from numerous and multiple types of clinical and genetic studies unequivocally establishes that LDL causes atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So this is a relatively newer study too. This is 2017 and published in the European Heart Journal. And so this is the kind of research that I was talking about, that these kinds of large-scale meta-analyses of various types of studies as well. To me, it really gives us the best evidence that a disease process is due to a certain particle in the blood. And in this case, it's LDL. Now, if you want to make an argument that non-HDL cholesterol is a better marker for cardiovascular disease than LDL, then I would agree with that, because there's some research that supports that notion. But to say that LDL has no role in that, I think this study is the first thing I would put on the table to suggest that's not the case.
Okay, number one, how did me saying that you cannot establish causality between LDL and atherosclerosis, how did that turn into me saying that it plays no role?
Oh, so let me clarify your position. So are you saying that LDL does or does not play a role in atherosclerotic heart disease?
I have an opinion on that, but that's my opinion based on my understanding of the science and my interpretation of the science, which is significant. My statement of fact, my irrefutable statement of fact, my moot point from the outset of any debate with anybody on this topic is, you cannot establish causality between LDL and atherosclerosis. It is a hypothesis. And if you want to talk about the mechanisms and you want to talk about how it develops, I can show you why it's a fucking stupid idea and why it's very, very unlikely to be correct. And if you want to wave a bunch of, epidemiology and Mendelian studies with so many holes in them, you might as well call it a sieve, which we can talk about if you like, then I don't know how to help you. I mean, that's a form of indoctrination, and I'm sure that's what you get in medical school. I know that because I've taught more pre-med students than you've probably had hot feeds. Okay, I do know how this stuff works. All right? And when you say mechanism is not important, the only thing that's important is what we can show over large numbers of people, that just shows that you actually have no grasp of science. Okay? Science is not about looking at what happens across populations and drawing causal type inferences from population data. Science is about explaining things mechanistically. Okay, that's what's missing here. Well, if you want to talk about the mechanisms of atherosclerosis, let's go there. If you want to talk about your Mendelian studies and your epidemiology and stuff, and you want me to basically flamethrow that stuff for you because it's a load of fucking bullshit, I'll do that for you. You just tell me which way you want to go.
Yeah, the problem. So first of all, I just want to say that I have a huge interest and passion about mechanism. I absolutely love mechanism. I love pathophysiology. It's my favorite aspect of medicine, actually. Absolutely love it. I love rapid review path. I just love all aspects of it. So that I just want to get that get that on the table there, just so you know where I'm coming from. Having said that, the reason why I don't like to start with mechanism is because, to me, it's ignoring the more valuable aspect of the discussion. Now, I didn't say mechanism is completely useless, not at all. I recognize that mechanism informs our scientific inquiry and our deeper studying into deeper clinical analysis and, as I said, higher level studies. So mechanism is extremely important. But having said that, again, I'll go back to that point, which again I don't think you commented on, that mechanism does not necessarily dictate what's found in clinical research or what's found at the endpoints, right? So if you have a certain mechanism, a certain way you think something would work, that doesn't mean that's what will actually bear out when you actually analyze a medication or a drug or anything, right? That's why drugs or treatments don't get approved and put on market just with mechanistic data alone. They have to go through numerous phases, as you know, and one of those phases is case control studies, placebo, double-blind, randomized controlled studies, where they have to actually analyze the drugs in large samples of population before they'll release them. And the reason for that is mechanistic explanations for how things work are not good enough. Okay, I just want to just ask you again one thing. So, are you saying that there's absolutely no evidence at all that LDL is connected to atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease? What's your perspective with respect to the evidence, not your opinion? I'm not interested in your opinion.
Okay, the evidence is clear in terms of causality. There is no causal evidence. Okay, that's not my opinion. That's a scientific fact. The evidence is not there. What we have is a hypothesis. It's a hypothesis which is supported by a couple of things. One of those is a consensus, which has no value whatsoever and no place in science whatsoever. And in fact, it's corrupt and bastardized beyond belief. What else is there? There is epidemiology and Mendelian type studies, which are inferential at best and do not actually deal with causality, which is important. I will disagree with you absolutely on this point. Causality is absolutely fundamental. And I will acknowledge your fact about drugs often having effects and working in ways that were not thought about or planned, that may be serendipitous or otherwise. And I guess, an obvious example of that is the mechanism by which the statin drugs work, which I'm sure we'll get to if we last that long. So my position is clear. My position is, as outlined in my position statement, in my moot suggestion for this debate, which is, does LDL cholesterol cause atherosclerosis or does it not? The answer, before we even start talking about mechanisms, is, well, there is no evidence that it does. Okay, so therefore the moot becomes, okay, so what evidence is there that it does or does not? Okay, so that's what we're throwing around here.
Okay. Well, I mean, I put to you a meta-analysis and a high-level study that captured thousands and thousands of patients, and it disagrees with your statement. So it's actual research, European Heart Journal. And
Okay, hang on. What those
I thought you said no interruption. What happened to that?
Because you go on for a very, very long time and you're saying something that's not correct.
Okay, but is interruption allowed now? If it's allowed, then that's fine with me. But let's clear the floor here. Is interruption allowed or not allowed?
Okay, you carry on.
Yeah. All right. So forth this study, and I think that has to be analyzed. And I don't know if you want to do it now or you would do it at a later time. If you want to do it at a later time, that's totally fine. And I'd like to discuss the study with you and where you think the faults of the study are before we move on to more research. And I have more research I can present to you. In terms of specifically what you're saying about LDL not being a cause of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, I think what you said based on your last statement was that there's no evidence that LDL causes atherosclerotic disease. Again, I would have to disagree with that based on the research I presented to you. Also, I don't know if you're aware of the PCSK9 studies where there's patients that have gain-of-function mutations, and PCSK9 serine protease is more effective at down-regulating LDL receptors. And in those patients, there's an increase in atherosclerotic disease. I have a study on that too I can post. So I think it's another strong study that elucidates, again, not as strong as the meta-analysis, but still an interesting study that elucidates the fact that LDL is, in fact, connected to atherosclerotic disease. So I think these kinds of studies need to be analyzed in these discussions.
This is the point I'm talking about here, is you've made several different points there, and it's very, very difficult to answer more than one point without this going on all night and without me having to sit here and take notes, because you want to make 2 and 3 points instead of 1 point at a time. So let's deal with your first point. You talked about a meta-analysis that disagrees with me. Okay, what you did is you read out a statement from that paper written by the authors of that paper, where the authors of that paper state an opinion. What you didn't present is any empirical evidence in support of that statement. Just because that statement is in that paper and published, that doesn't confer correctness of that statement, does it?
No, I can read the methods and results of the entire analysis of the paper. It wasn't an opinion. It was the concentration and end conclusion based on research of 2 million patients, 2 million participants, and 20 million person years of follow-up. So it was based on that.
Does that paper say LDL cholesterol causes heart disease?
Yeah, it does. The conclusion, and I'll read the conclusion to you again. It says, consistent evidence from numerous and multiple different types of clinical and genetic studies unequivocally establishes that LDL causes atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. That's the conclusion.
Okay, what numbers is that based on?
The numbers are the participants, you mean the methods? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I mean the empirical evidence for that opinion statement, because it is not there because they did not do a random research twins method would be the only way you could do it. Okay, they have not experimentally proven their case. They had an inference. However strong they might feel their inference is, nonetheless, it is an inference. It is not evidence. It is not scientific method to base conclusions on inference. Those authors have basically written an inappropriate statement there, and they've got to pass 2 peer reviewers and the editor of the journal. That's what happened there. That is not evidence. Evidence is empirical. If you're going to say this causes that, you better show me a clinical study that establishes that fact with all other confounds properly controlled, and it needs to be properly powered and properly designed. Failing that,
Okay. Do you want to read through the study with me? Actually, we don't even need it. We have full access. We don't have to even pay for it. Everything's here. We can go through it and see kind of where it fails. But like I don't see how the meta-analysis of numerous studies, whether they're epidemiological, whether they're Mendelian, I don't see how that constitutes no evidence. That doesn't make sense to me. It's a form of evidence. It's a strong form of evidence because of the degree of power it has. So you saying it's not evidence at all when you have actually not even read the paper, not even familiar with the paper, I think that's erroneous.
I don't need to read the paper. The key word here is causal.
Sure.
Inference is fine. If you want to say we have some inference here, if you want to say we have a hypothesis, that's fine. Okay, and we can talk about that inference and talk about the value of that inference, and I will poke every hole in it that you can possibly imagine because the inference is fucking ridiculous. If you want to say we have evidence for causality here, then you are on the wrong side of the ledger. You have broken the scientific discipline and you are making an inappropriate statement because the causal evidence does not exist.
Yeah, so again, if you have a meta-analysis and you have numerous types of studies and they all point to the same conclusion, then you can have a level of confidence, a certain level of confidence to make that statement. And obviously, the level of confidence of these authors was high enough to make that concluding statement, right? We're not looking at a single study involving 20 people or 50 people. We're looking at millions of people in this study. And based on the variability of data, you can make a conclusion with a certain level of confidence, right? To me, the way you're analyzing this is very black and white. It's either true and accurate or it's completely garbage. And I think that it's not the right way to analyze scientific research. The right way to analyze it is how confident are you that there's some merit to the findings or the research that's done, right? And that's why we, as you know, we have p-values and we have confidence intervals because science is not black and white, right? We have certain levels of understanding and confidence based on the research and the evidence that we have. And they were obviously sufficiently satisfied to come to the conclusion based on 2 million patients that LDL does cause atherosclerotic disease.
And that's a mistake. That's an error. They are wrong.
Okay. Well, okay, why don't we go to another study? Again, you're saying they're wrong, but you're not explaining why they're wrong. So that's I don't
say, Charlie Brown, I am explaining why they're wrong.
Actually, you're not. You haven't
actually, I am. Actually, I am. It's very, very clear. My position that I am taking here is about the evidence for causality. There isn't any. Therefore, we have a hypothesis.
No, there's lots of evidence.
Is open to debate. If you want to debate the hypothesis, the way to do that is to go to the fucking mechanisms. Can we go there?
That's completely wrong, actually. It's totally wrong.
No, it's not completely wrong, you fucking retard. It's not fucking wrong. Jesus Christ. Am I talking to somebody here that's got an IQ over 100? How did you get to be a fucking physician?
Bart, just calm down, okay, man? Just relax.
Well, stop being a fucking retard and listen to fucking sense, you fucktard.
All right, just relax, Bart. Just calm down, okay? Let's talk mechanism. as you know, mechanistic speculation is not as strong as
It's
meta-analysis.
not speculation.
Mechanistic speculation is not as strong
Mechanism
as
is the only thing that is important. It's the only thing that explains phenomena. We are here to talk about phenomena. We are here to talk about the phenomena of LDL and atherosclerosis. It requires you to talk mechanism. Let's go.
Actually, it doesn't. And
Okay, we're done here. Goodbye.
Bart, look, man. Let's just relax, man. Let's have a civil discussion, man. Let's have a civil discussion. The thing.
Then let's talk mechanism. Let's go. Mechanism. Go.
The problem is that I can speculate and say that, oh, this doesn't work, so this shouldn't be possible. But as you know, mechanism is incredibly complex. We often miss things. We often don't see things. That's why mechanism doesn't always bear out. So let me ask you a question, Bart. Why is it that we sometimes have a mechanistic understanding of a certain topic, right? Whatever it is, right? And then when we actually research it, we actually study it, it doesn't bear out. We find out, oh, there's no statistical difference between the case and the control group. There's no statistical difference between the group that we're studying, the group that we're controlling for. You know, why is it that there's that discordance between mechanistic data and for example, RCTs? Why?
Do you want to talk mechanism of atherogenesis, or do you not?
But can you answer my question first?
Your question is completely fucking irrelevant. It's got no bearing on what we are here to discuss. And what we are here to discuss is, can you establish that there is even a reasonable mechanism by which LDL might even potentially play a causal role in atherogenesis? And I'm here to discuss with you the fact that there isn't.
Okay, so do you want to change your statement then to there's no mechanism for it as opposed to no evidence?
No, I don't want to change my statement. My statement is clear, and it's based on words chosen very carefully over many years. My statement is clear. There is no evidence for causality between LDL cholesterol and atherogenesis in human beings.
Yeah, but
An additional point of interest, something that you and I can discuss if you'd ever stop dodging me on it, is we can talk about the mechanisms by which atherogenesis occurs. And that will blow another hole or another several holes, and will actually flamethrower the whole LDL argument. I wonder why you're avoiding doing that. Should we do that, or should we not do it?
I'm avoiding doing that because we haven't gotten past the first level of evidence, of the best evidence we have, which is meta-analysis.
Because it's not the best evidence. We don't agree on it, and I'm the senior scientist, okay? I'm the guy that's here to tell you you're mistaken. You're sadly mistaken. You've been led up the garden path. The hierarchy of evidence is absolute fucking nonsense.
So wait a minute, let me ask you a question. So you're saying that the mechanistic explanations and data is more important than a meta-analysis. Is that what you're saying?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay, well, what you're saying is not scientific, unfortunately.
Who's the senior scientist of the two of us?
Just because someone's senior doesn't mean they're not wrong.
Who's the senior scientist of the two of us?
Just because they're your senior doesn't mean you're not wrong.
Scientific, Charlie Brown. You back it up with some credentials, okay? Have you got a list of publications as long as you fucking...
Have you ever actually...
Have you got a list of publications as long as your arm?
Have you ever actually treated...
No, you don't. Have you acted as peer reviewer for 3 separate journals? No, you fucking haven't.
Have you actually...
Have you taught more pre-med students than you've had hot dinners? No, you fucking haven't. I have. You will give me some goddamn respect. Don't tell me what is scientific and what is not, Charlie Brown.
Post your publications.
Bart, sorry, man, sorry. Bart, look, I can say the same thing to you, man. I can say, have you ever treated patients? Have you ever prescribed medications? Have you ever actually practiced medicine? You've taught pre-med students, but have you ever been a medical doctor yourself? You haven't. So you've.
We are here to discuss science, Charlie Brown. Science. And you're telling me about science, and you can fuck off because I'm the one who's here to tell you about science.
Okay, I'll make a deal with you, Bart. I'll make a deal with you. I will talk mechanism with you if you change your statement, because I don't accept your statement that there's no evidence that LDL causes cardiovascular disease. If you want to change your statement that there's no mechanistic explanation for why LDL causes atherosclerotic disease, then I'll engage with you in the mechanism. But if you don't change your statement, I'm not going to engage with you.
Okay, we're done here.
All right. But Bart, ask any medical doctor, ask anybody who practices.
Don't give a fuck. We're done here. Goodbye.
Ask anybody who practices medicine, and the thing that you start with in a discussion is the strongest evidence you have. You never start with mechanism. Because Bart, look, I can say that a certain LDL gets absorbed into monocytes and they become modified, they become oxidized, they become macrophages. You will disagree. You'll say, no, this cytokine doesn't do that. So because this cytokine doesn't do that, it can never happen. But the problem is, Bart, as you know, the mechanistic detail is hyper complex. We're probably missing half the cytokines that are involved in the inflammatory macrophage pathway. I love mechanism. I love apoptosis. I love caspase pathways. I love all that stuff, Bart. You and me are not as dissimilar as you think. I'm with you, man. I love mechanism. I love pathophysiology. If you and me sit down and we talk about Golion and rapid review, and we talk about lymphocytes and macrophages and monocytes, and I did a whole course on extracellular matrix and cytoskeleton. So I absolutely love mechanism, Bart. And we're not too dissimilar. I wish we could meet and have a more friendly discussion. I really wish we could. But
that would require you to show some goddamn respect to a senior scientist and stop telling me about science and what's good science and what's bad science, and listen to me when I tell you what's bad science and what's good science, and then engage with me in a discussion when I invite one straight away, rather than pissing around for 15 minutes and then just randomly saying, this cytokine, that cytokine, the other cytokine. Okay, great. If you wanted to talk about that, you had your opportunity. Instead, you wanted to treat with me with disrespect and tell me you know more about science than I do, in which case you can go and fuck yourself.
Bart, you haven't been respectful to him yourself, dude.
Hey, leave it to just let Bart and Ricky talk.
Okay. Wait a minute, Bart, hold on, man. One second. So, did he leave? He left. All right. Okay, well, here's the thing. Yeah, he left. The thing is I really want to get into mechanism. I love mechanism so much. I was going to actually post this. Hold on.
Ricky,
I was, is he back? No.
No, your mic
Yeah.
is cut out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wanted to post this picture. See this picture of oxidized LDL, and it goes into the macrophages, becomes foamy cells, becomes an atheroma. It has the atheromatous cap. Man, I love mechanism so much. I love pathophysiology so much. It's my favorite aspect of medicine. That's what's ironic about it. But the problem with going there is it just derails the whole conversation, because you can't focus on precise, specific cytokines and signaling molecules and all these kinds of things, because the end point is what matters, right? Why do I care if LDL gets oxidized and uptaken into a cell if it or it doesn't get uptaken, for example, if it is killing people? I could say, mechanistically, wait a minute, LDL doesn't get oxidized, that doesn't happen. Then when I do the research and then they study millions of patients and they say, hey, there's a linear correlation between LDL and total cholesterol going up and increased cardiovascular disease. So what's going on, right? That's why you can't rely on mechanism. That's why mechanism is weak, right? Mechanism helps us to inform where we might go in science and where we might research and where we might investigate. But the thing that trumps all is high-level scientific evidence, because that's what actually dictates through statistical analysis what the end clinical effect is on patients. And I think that's the problem with Bart is I even though he was disrespectful, I appreciate Bart's position because he has a lot of knowledge, obviously, with respect to mechanism. But because of that, that's also his hindrance. He doesn't realize the importance of the end clinical research. That's where where people like me are. We're sitting at the end point where the clinical stuff is, and we're using the clinical stuff. That's where things really make a difference, right? There's invariable countless times where I learned a mechanism in medical school and we say, okay, it should be this way. And then when we go further in our education, we go to high level evidence, they say, oh, there's no difference. It doesn't matter. It's such a common theme. And I think that Bart, because of his background, he fails at that aspect. He's too hung up on mechanism and not open enough to analyzing end clinical research, endpoint clinical research. Do I care if LDL gets absorbed by a macrophage? Maybe I care, but what do I care about more, that or people dying because they're eating too much garbage and their LDL is too high? And then the other thing, just for everybody here, I know the debate's over, but I just want to say the other thing I did mention. I had a lot more studies to mention, but the other thing I mentioned was, and it's kind of a mechanistic explanation. So, and actually, Richard always mentions this in his talks as well. So the thing with LDL cholesterol is it has receptors, right, that absorb it from the liver and the intestine. And those receptors are very important because those receptors absorb the cholesterol and essentially take it out of the bloodstream, so it doesn't basically gunk up your arteries and give you a heart attack. Now, there's a certain protease, or sorry, let me go back here. There's a certain protein. It's called PCSK9. And what that protein does is it breaks down the receptor and it transports it and gets rid of it, essentially, but it brings it into the liver and gets rid of it. So you can't sop up and absorb as much cholesterol. Your cholesterol level essentially starts to go up, and it can't be appropriately recycled and taken care of. What happens to those patients that have too much of that protein? They have too much PCSK9. It's too strong. What happens is they get more heart attacks. They get more heart attacks. They get more heart failure. They get more heart disease. And the reason for that is very clear. Their LDL receptors are going away. They're not able to deal with the cholesterol properly. And then everything gets gunked up. All the cholesterol starts rising, and then you get this inflammatory process that I posted in the general. If you want to see the actual mechanism of LDL causing it, and I actually have a whole paper on mechanisms of LDL causing atherogenesis. It's a recognized atherogenic particle. But the reason I didn't want to go there is because it would just be a derailing that would be totally useless, because he would just say, oh, this cytokine doesn't do this, so therefore the mechanism is irrelevant and therefore it can't happen. But actually, buddy, when you look at 2 million people, it does happen. It is correlated. So yeah, it's unfortunate that the debate went that way, but what can you do?
Ricky, I love you. Do you have anything else that you just want to say about this topic or about Bart in general? Because I think Vegan Gains and I are probably going to upload this. So if you have any doctor's words you want for the world, anything else, or have you said all you want?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that if you're a scientist and you want to engage in science, and I guess this is for everybody. I was telling Isaac this before. When it comes to nutrition and things like that, I mean, everybody seems to have an opinion. With my patients too, they come in. Vaccines are a classic topic. They come in, they say, "Oh, I'm so worried about this vaccine. I'm so worried about this. I watched this YouTube video. I watched this documentary. I have this mechanism," or higher level people like Bart who are saying, "Oh, I'm so worried about this mechanism. It doesn't explain this." my advice to all of those people, not that I'm so great or not at all. I'm just a normal guy. I'm just a normal doc. That's all I am. But my advice is when you're having a scientific discussion, start with high-level evidence. Put your evidence on the table. I'll put my evidence on the table that vaccines are safe, for example, or that LDL cholesterol causes disease. You put your evidence on the table, and then let's get into the evidence. Let's get into the analysis of why that's wrong, rather than resorting to authority, rather than resorting to mechanistic speculation, rather than resorting to YouTube documentaries, or this person said this, or Robert De Niro said this about vaccines. That stuff's not helpful. What is helpful is statistical analysis and high-level rigorous study that's been peer-reviewed by scientific journals. That's what's helpful. And I tell that to my patients too. I never tell them not to ask me questions or not to challenge me. I love when my patients challenge me, because then we can both sit down, we open up UpToDate or Google Scholar, we together look at the research, and then I show them this is what the research shows. And then at that point, if you're like Bart and you are somehow refuting that based on authority or based on some kind of sky force or whatever your point of refutation is, then I walk away from the discussion, because you're not being scientific. And in that case, Bart was not being scientific. So that's my advice to everybody. That's all I have to say.
Thanks so much, Ricky. Okay,
No problem.
well, I think that's it. And whoever recorded that, please DM me in my inbox, and then I'll friend you so you can send it to me and we can get it up on the internet. Have a good night, guys.